Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele, along with my co-host, Kyle. How are we doing, Kyle?
Doing pretty good. It's funny, we've been talking about Quantumania on our various Twitter spaces for the past 24 hours now, so it's it's been interesting to say the least.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, that's what we're here for. We are here. So there's a little movie coming out. People may or may not have seen it, and it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And so, as it says in the description, this is going to be a spoiler cast. So we are going to drop every single detail, nugget, nook and cranny, whatever you can think of about the film. And I know it's only Friday, guys, so bear with us. Scheduling conflicts and everything else. He's seen it. I've seen it. So we're going to do it now because we have things to do over the weekend. Nonetheless, this is going to be a spoiler cast. If you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania, go see it and then come back and watch this. If you have seen it, fabulous. And stay tuned because we got a whole boatload of stuff to get to. So, what we're going to do right off the top is we are going to talk about overall thoughts. So, I want you to go first, Kyle, because I know you have your opinions on it. Give us your thoughts on the movie, your overall thoughts on the movie, and then give us your overall thoughts of the end credit scenes, mid and post credit scenes, if there were one. So it's all yours.
So I'll say that I liked the film. I didn't love the film. It's at least for now, it's one of my least favorite of the MCU films. But what's interesting is what I've noticed with the most recent MCU films, one of them being Thor: Love and Thunder, is like I thought when that came out that was like one of my least favorites, and then I saw this one and I was like, oh no, I might like Thor: Love and Thunder more. So it all depends on what movies come out and how you're feeling when you're watching them. Sometimes you like a movie more once you watch it, sometimes you like it less. So at least for now, it's one of my least favorites. But I mean, I'm open to having my mind changed in multiple rewatches. But for me, what I liked about the movie was I really liked the idea of them going into the quantum realm. Basically, the story revolves around Ant-Man, the Wasp, Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, and Ant-Man's daughter Cassie getting sucked into the quantum realm. And it's really a family-based film. It's based around this family unit. And I like that element to the film. It gave the movie almost a fun vibe because when we watch other MCU films, it's usually about a found family, like a number of people that really are just family because they're now friends. But here you're having a father and daughter, another father, mother, and daughter. And I think that made it for a very interesting element of the film to see this relationship. And I love all these characters. I think that Scott, played by Paul Rudd, is just the best. And I really love the way that he plays Ant-Man. And he adds such a unique vibe to the character that not the other MCU characters have. He's quirky at times, but at other times he just makes you happy to see. And um, Evangeline Lilly is great as Hope. And I think one of my favorite elements of this series is that they get Michael Douglas, the great Michael Douglas, to star in these films, and he doesn't know, I think, a lot of the MCU canon. He made a joke the other day on a I think a press junket. He's like, what is Phase 5? And but like he's there and he looks like he's just having a blast with what he's being given to do. And then you have Michelle Pfeiffer, whose role in this movie is expanded upon and way more than I think anyone was expecting. She's in a way the central focus of the film, her and Kang's relationship. We'll get to Kang a little bit later, but I really thought that the idea of this family trapped in this weird world was fun. It reminded me of the film that just came out a couple of weeks ago a couple months ago called Strange World, and I dug that aspect. I also kind of enjoyed the vast number of creatures and characters in the quantum realm. At times, I was wondering why we should, really care about these characters because they really felt like they were part of this film and they didn't feel sometimes when you watch the MCU, you're like, say, like the Falcon and Captain America Winter Soldier, you're immediately invested in this character. You're immediately like, ooh, I want to see more of him. None of the characters I'd say in Quantumania, the supporting creature characters, I felt the need to see more of. They were there and I think they did their job well, but I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of them in the way that they are characters. They kind of reminded me of the Captain Marvel supporting characters in Captain Marvel. Because if you remember in Captain Marvel, she worked with a team. They were like the Kree. And this team that Captain Marvel worked with at the beginning of the film, they are kind of disposable. The characters that you kind of forget about. Some of them you were like Jude Law played, then you had Gemma Chan play another. And I think they worked good for the storyline, but you don't see those characters appearing again. And I think that that was the same thing when it came to these Quantum Realm characters. But sometimes they made these jokes that I thought were really funny, and sometimes they had some charm to them. William Jackson Harper, he plays a specific character in the film. I forget his name. It's like Kez or something. And I thought he was pretty funny. He's like a telepath. David Dalsmalchian plays this like liquid, gooey creature called Veb, who I think has this funny running gag about having no holes. But for me, I think the standout of the film was Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. And what I loved about him was you really didn't know what he was going to do next. He seemed like a very untrusting character, but at the same time, there were moments where I thought he was like one that I sympathized with, especially when he's talking to Janet. And they both had some great scenes together. I also, personally, I had fun with the character of MODOK, who is played by Corey Stoll. He's revealed to be a resurrected version of Darren Cross from the first Ant-Man, who ended up in this quantum realm all like broken up. And I thought he was a unique character, and at times he's so ridiculous. It's basically just this, floating chair looking character with small arms and legs, and then he has this battle visor that you see in this picture here, but then the battle visor is removed and you see him just his regular face. And a lot of people might not like it, but I mean, I thought it was so silly, and it also was comic accurate that it worked with how silly this movie is in terms of the characters that are portrayed. And I honestly, like, sometimes like I'm watching him, I'm like, you know what, I like seeing him on screen. And I think the movie itself, if I had criticisms, I think that it is my least favorite of the Ant-Man series, because the first two Ant-Man movies had a central focus in regards to Ant-Man and even the Wasp. But here it really feels like the focus is more around Janet and Scott in a way, and Kang. And if I look at like the vast number of prior MCU movies, there are like themes and such expressed in the film, but here I didn't get much of that. And it's not to say that's a, really bad thing, because I still enjoyed myself watching it, but it's a movie that I feel when you look at a film such as Wakanda Forever, even Eternals, these are films that I think have a lot of deep messages to them that I would have liked to see a little bit more of in this film. It's also a film that I feel was messed with a lot in the post-production process, because there's a lot of scenes in this film that feel they are edited very strangely, especially like when you get to the end of the film, which, I mean, since this is a spoiler cast, the ending of the film, after they defeat Kang, it's about a 2-minute sequence of Scott just walking back home and being like, something's not right. Did we really defeat Kang? Is this real? What is going on? And then he goes to sit at a restaurant to eat dinner with his family, and then he takes a bite of a piece of cake and he's like, ew, disgusting. And then the movie ends. And I remember when the credits came up, not a single person clapped. And I feel like if you had a more fun ending, like if the movie ended and like he just is back with everybody and it just ends really peacefully, I think people would be clapping. But it left the audience like, huh? And then when you get to the end credit scenes are far removed from that ending. And I personally felt a little bit like especially because you have two end credit scenes. You have the mid credit scene, which is to establish the Council of Kangs, which is going to play a part in Kang Dynasty. Those are going to be like the main villains of the Kang Dynasty, and that's okay. But then you get the second post credit scene, which is literally a clip from Loki season 2, and I understand why they put that there, but it just feels like that ending of Quantumania with Scott wondering if everything's all right and then just eating a piece of cake, it just didn't work for me. Wasp is a character in this movie that isn't utilized as much as I think she should be, and I mean, but like for me, I think the positives outweigh the negatives, and I had a fun time watching it, and I think a lot of people will. So those are my general thoughts of the movie. David, I think you're muted.
So, yeah, it was good, not great. I mean, I put out a tweet the other night about it. Um, it was good, not great. I liked it. I mean, it wasn't fabulous. It wasn't, oh my god, this is gonna blow my socks off. Um, it had its problems. Definitely had its problems. Um, the whole, I okay. I will say one thing, that the title actually lived up to the billing. This isn't like Multiverse of Madness where you think, okay, we're going to get all this great stuff, and we got pieces of. The majority, the 90 minutes, almost 100 minutes you were in the theater, you got a lot of Quantumania. Were the effects were good? Yeah, for the most part. I mean, for me, you know, I'm not really looking at the effects, although that is a big portion of it. Especially when you're in a very heavy CGI movie. For me, it's all about story. Um, it was good, not great. Um, I thought that the relationship between Cassie and her dad was okay. I mean, she did an okay job. Um, and it just Catherine Newton did an average job. I mean, I'm not going to say she blew my socks off, but she was okay. Um, you could kind of see an underlying theme there. I mean, she always wanted to help somebody, and that was great. And younger generation, everything else. I think that it really had. Um, there were a lot of things. The one standout, like I said, is, and you brought it up, Kyle, is Jonathan Majors. He just blew my socks off, and and I said in the tweet, if his um Kang is half of what uh he's going to be in Creed 3, look out. Um, as far as the story is concerned, it was all right. I love the fact that Michelle Pfeiffer got a lot of screen time. Um, I love the fact I agree with you to the extent that the Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan Majors um, um, scenes were fantastic. You know, one thing I really did like was the backstory. You heard about Kang. I mean, they had to put it in there somewhere. It's so in film. there's something you always want to give breadcrumbs to the audience. For the first 20 minutes of this movie, they never said his name, and you kind of knew who they were talking about, but you knew they were talking about. But it was like him, he, and so they referred to him as the Conqueror and everything else. And it was like, okay, just say the guy's name. I know you want to, you know. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it really started to pick up when we sit down with Bill Murray, right? And that whole sequence and everything else. I thought it was good. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't as far as an Ant-Man movie. Now I'll say this much: what they did introducing Kang and the Ant-Man, they could have left. They could have put it as an after credit scene or a mid credit scene, and I think had they followed the same formula, what they did with Thanos, I think it would have been good. But you got to give us a good 2 minute nugget of it. Um, yeah, I
I
mean,
think
Michael
that's a
Douglas was
great
there,
point. Yeah.
and it was good. It wasn't great. Now, that all being said, it did have its problems. Um, I did the little alien creatures. I did like the mind reading creature, not mind
Yeah.
reading, but the mind reader reminded me of Korg from Ragnarok. Like that little buddy buddy relationship type of thing, and I liked it. I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't fantastic. I think and everybody. That's the one thing I have heard over the internet and people that have seen it, like yourself. They are raving about Jonathan Majors, and this guy is going to blow everybody's socks off. He has a nuance. He has a presence on screen. I love that scene when, all you see is his feet, and then walking. It was a little cut in the trailer, and he's walking, and then you just they pan up, and then you just see the face mask go. It was just
Yeah.
kind of reminded me a little of Darth Vader, in the little fact that he could tweak
Yeah.
his fingers and do that. I had a good time with it. Um, Now it's not top MCU. Let's make that crystal clear. This is definitely not top tier MCU. Um, there were no stakes. There were no stakes, and the fact being is that I think that what you had, okay, is it's called Ant Man and the Wasp. Okay, we understand this. However, the fact is that they were separated in the majority of the movie. I mean, Hope and Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas's character were separated for the majority of the film. And it's one of those things where, you know, I just I, if you're calling it Ant-Man and the Wasp, she has to be with Ant-Man. Um, we see the scene where, you know, Majors, they want him to dive down into that thing to get whatever it is, and we finally see Hope there midway through the movie,
Yeah.
and it's just, I,
But
I don't know.
David, when I'm thinking about this, because I also as I mentioned, I think that the Wasp definitely, I mean, not Hope definitely needed, I think, a little bit more in this film because I think of all the characters in the film, she is given the least. And I
I would agree with that.
I think what's interesting though is, I mean, of course, it most likely is Ant-Man the Wasp referring to Hope, but Hope isn't the only Wasp. Janet
No, you're right.
is the
You're
Wasp
absolutely
too.
right.
And I do wonder, whether they were thinking about that. They probably weren't. They probably were just like Ant-Man and the Wasp because the last one was called that. And they probably didn't want to just call it Ant-Man because it would sound like,
Because
oh,
there's too much confusion, to
yeah.
be
So,
frank.
but like, I do think it is interesting though that you do have two wasps in this movie, and it's not like you're saying that, you know, one wasp, we didn't get enough wasp, because technically we did get a lot of wasp. It just
Right.
wasn't the wasp that we thought we would be getting.
Right.
But yeah, like I think to your point about it being Quantumania, yeah, we did get the Quantumania stuff. I also loved your point because I completely forgot about the whole Kang stuff, and that was a great point to make about the name, because they don't do that, and it's a really interesting, I think, storytelling tactic, because you feel this sense of fear, right? When you're watching this film, you don't, it's like, he knows about us. We can't know about, and you're like, oh, who is he? You're very interested, and the way the film begins, you're like, I mean, for an audience member that doesn't know about the movie, they'll say to themselves, who is this man that Janet discovers at the beginning of the film? And it gives you, I think, a sense of mystery that then works well once you do meet Kang. I will say that I wish we meet like the main Kang sooner than we do in the film, because I feel like once you talk about Bill Murray when he shows up, it really gets interesting. For me, it's when we finally get more of Jonathan Majors as Kang, because I feel like I think the first time we see him is through that flashback of her and him, and that's when I think it really started to kick off, because I think he's really the fuel that makes this film work. And if he's not in it, I think it doesn't work. And I just like whenever he's on screen, you're watching him and you're just fascinated by this man. Who is he? What can he do? I want to ask you though, because what really shocked me about this was that he is defeated in this film. I didn't think he would be defeated. I thought that he would possibly escape, or he would defeat Ant-Man and then win for the next movie. And it looks like he's dead. This version of this variant of Kang, and it makes me curious. Do you think we'll see this version again, or do you think this one is actually dead and gone? You're muted.
So I think that no, to your point, I was shocked. I was shocked that I mean, because here's the thing too. You have Scott uttering the line, "You don't have to win. We just both have to lose."
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I mean, he's going to sacrifice himself for the greater good here. I mean, that's what, you know, i- yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, the fact that maybe, and I don't know too much about Kang, but maybe they can bring him back. I mean, to your point about being guilt, I didn't think. Look, if he was as that strong as he was supposed to be, Ant-Man should not have been able to defeat him. It's that simple. It's that simple. I'm sorry. If you have the Avengers doing it, that's one thing. Like all of the Avengers, but to have Ant Man beat him, I just don't understand that. We have a comment here by Destiny. I think he's dead because the purpose of Kang. I think he's dead because the purpose of Kang is that he had many versions of him and he's trying to be a menace. Yeah, I could see that. I could absolutely see that. And I think that, I mean, and that goes to the end credit scene, you know, with you having as you called it. Now, let me ask you this question, and I don't know this to be true or false. Is the Council of Kang is canon in the comics,
Yes.
Kyle?
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
big
so
part.
maybe, and that's why, and that's why he asked, well, how many did you call? And he's like, all of them. Well, I mean, and by the way, as I was saying, that his death basically meant like there was nothing there. You could kill one and they're just gonna, it's like that scene in Captain America: Winter Soldier where he says, if you kill one, more heads
Yeah.
pop up. It's the same premise. So how big and bad is this guy supposed to be if you kill one and two more just pop up? I don't understand that. I mean, I think that overall story wise, it was okay. you know, um, did, let me ask you about the ending because I know you're a big component of the ending. Um, did you, first of all, did you think that Scott was going to die? And second of all, did you think that he wasn't going to get out of the quantum realm?
Yeah, well, I I was a little nervous that he would die because especially when you see him say, "I don't need, you to win. I just need both of us to lose." Um, and for me, I thought the film was going to end when him and Hope got stuck in the quantum realm.
As
And
did I.
I
As did I.
and I think I may have heard. I think I may have heard in a Twitter Spaces. I think that was the original ending,
I would have.
and
That
they
would have
actually.
been a phenomenal ending.
And I
I
think
really
they.
do believe that because here's the thing: you had look as a father, okay. The big thing is that Cass. There had been a big conflict between Cassie and her father, and then she grew to respect him and everything else, and that's why when he pushes her through, I
Yeah,
thought it was going to close. I thought they were both shut in. And they were
exactly.
going
And
to stay that way for the rest of their lives, and they were going to live happily ever after. And then you were going to get, Hank and her, Janet to raise or to, but on a story level, I get it because the way you started out the film, not Majors, not Kane crashing, but him walking through and the whole gag of, oh, thank you, Spider-Man. You had to bring it full circle. And if you don't do that, now, that being said,
mm,
I get why they did it. I don't think it was really good. Um, so
this
let's
is the thing, David. Though I just remembered they actually were filming reshoots for Ant-Man like a couple months back, and I remember the reshoots were actually. I bet they were the reshoots that were at the end of this movie. They were the final scenes that they decided to put back. They decided to put into the film. I think that was a mistake
yeah.
because I think by far the weakest element of this film is the ending.
Mm,
Like by far.
I would
And
agree with you wholeheartedly.
I do wonder if they kept maybe they were like, "Oh, we don't want Scott to be stuck in the quantum realm again before the next Avengers movie." Maybe they were thinking that. Maybe they were like, "You know what? It's kind of a downer to, end it off on them being stuck on the quantum realm in an Ant-Man movie." I don't know. It's just that I don't know, that ending felt just out of
Contrived.
place. I
It
understand, like you mentioned, it links up with the beginning, but it did not work for me.
no,
And
no,
I
no, no,
think
no.
that if it
If he was
ended with
supposed,
them in the quantum realm, it would have
if
been a
he was
much better
supposed to be
ending.
the hero that he
Yeah.
was supposed to be, um, I'm sorry, you know, um, he needed to be a hero. He could have been a hero to his daughter. Do you know what I mean? He could have been a
Yeah.
hero to his daughter, and that would have I won't say solved all the problems. That would have definitely been understandable. I think that the one thing else, and by the way, besides your little thing here, nobody is talking about Modoc. Nobody.
Well, it
And
depends on
I
who you ask.
well,
Because
exactly,
I've
yeah,
seen
no.
some
In
people
all
talk
honesty,
about him.
true. Okay, point taken. I thought this character, and everybody knew he was going to be in it and everything else. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was
Yeah.
a joke. I thought it was funny. And as I said, I don't know anything about the comics. But that being said, and when he takes the thing off, it's like, and that's the first words out of their mouth. Darren, is that you?
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, really?
Yeah.
I get why you had to put him in there because he's a part of the canon and everything else, but come on.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
having,
I
I
know.
mean, and then as he's dying, right? I mean, as
I
Cassie's,
love that scene
yeah,
though. I
as
loved it.
Cassie,
It was so
as
funny.
Cassie is talking to him, and kind of defeats him a little bit and says, well, you don't have to be a dick. And I just went, oh my God, really? This is what you're going to do? And it was funny. And you kind of knew he was going to come back. And then when Kang had the force field around him and all the ants came. And by the way, so it's called the Ant-Man and the Wasp. That fucking ants come in the last 20 minutes of the movie? I don't get this. But nonetheless, so he barrels himself through there and, you know, and then, he basically calls himself an Avenger. And it's just like, and, he takes the thing off and, it's just, I'm sorry.
And that's the
It didn't
thing, though,
work.
David. It's something that I know people will either like it or hate it, because that's the thing with MODOK. He's a really like or hate character. He's not a character that, I mean, you see that character on the comic book page. There's like no way you can adapt that character into, a convincing film villain. And I think that they did the best of what they were given, and I think it worked for the film because it gave, Kang that like sidekick to work with, but in a way that kind of harkened back to the first film, with that character. I also personally like that they redeemed Darren Cross in a sense in this movie, because if you remember in the first movie, Darren Cross isn't, I think, naturally a bad person. It's just that the Pym particles have messed with his brain and he's now become insane due to the Pym particles. And I kind of like the idea that, at the end of this film, he does somewhat get a redemption arc, because I think the way they portrayed the first film, he wasn't at his core really a bad man. He just wanted to be too much like Hank. And I did like that part. I don't know what, I mean, Cassie's an interesting one to talk about, because Cassie, for me, I was a little mixed on Catherine Newton's performance. I think it might have been because, when you're surrounded by actors like Jonathan Majors, Paul Rudd, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas, it's kind of hard to have a young actor come in and act with them. Sometimes they work really well off of them. If you look at True Grit, Haley Steinfeld did an incredible job with Jeff Bridges and Matt Damon, Josh Brolin. But here, I wasn't as into Catherine Newton's performance. I don't know if it was because maybe the way the character was written. Maybe it was just the way she acted. Something to me didn't feel right, and I missed the original Cassie from the early Ant-Man movies, the little
No.
girl.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a critique I had for the film. I thought the action was pretty good, especially when it went into that fight between Kang and Ant-Man.
Oh,
I thought that was a great
that
fight.
was that. I mean,
definitely, when you're talking about Creed, it gives you a sense of what he's like in the ring.
If this guy is anything what he can be in Creed 3, look out.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, we're going to be covering Creed 3 here on the channel. We're going to be doing a spoiler cast. We're going to have Creed Week in a couple weeks. We're going to sit down and watch all the Creed movies, Creed and Creed 2. We're going to go see Creed 3 on Thursday, the 2nd of March. And we'll be right back here on Friday talking about Creed 3. But nonetheless, and Jonathan Majors is a phenomenal actor. He did the best he could with the material that he had.
It's elevated.
That simple.
He elevated really it. And that's something that, if he wasn't in this movie, I think it would be a different film. I think
Let me ask you this question.
Talking about something.
Now, they do have so if anybody who's looked at his credits and whatever, the writer for this film was the writer for Rick and Morty. Now, I'm not saying writing for animation is bad and everything else. Do you think that had something? I mean, there's a difference between writing for animation. There's a difference between writing for television and streaming, and there's a difference between writing for feature film. That being said, even though you're bringing Peyton Reed back, the director who's done the other two films, do you think that was an issue? And if you do or don't, one way or the other, do you think this is going to be problematic for Kang Dynasty?
I don't know, because I mean, I believe one of the other, I think it was Loki. Michael Waldron worked on Loki, and he worked on Rick and Morty. They've been pulling a couple of writers from Rick and Morty onto these shows. Even I think She-Hulk, and I think that I really enjoyed Loki. It's one of my favorite projects out of like all the MCU content we've gotten lately, and I don't think it's just because he wrote Rick and Morty, but there is a sense that the screenplay definitely could have been more finer tuned, especially if they got someone more experienced in terms of film screenplays. I'll have to look at after this. I'll have to look to see who was attached and what other things they worked on. If there was like a story credit, because the thing I will always say is that Edgar Wright was originally going to write and direct the first Ant-Man film, and they used elements of his screenplay in the finished film. I think you can tell that the elements of his screenplay in that first Ant-Man are by far like the best parts of this entire franchise. And Peyton Reed is a director that I actually really loved his work on The Mandalorian, and he did a suitable job on the Ant-Man movies. But I think that these movies also kind of needed a shift in directors, because when you look at Doctor Strange, I personally like the idea of having Scott Derrickson do the first one and then Sam Raimi do the second one. They're different directors, but they bring their own, unique vision into the projects. And we're going to see with the Marvels that will be directed by someone different. I like that, and I kind of wish they maybe got a different director than Peyton Reed to do this movie. I feel like maybe, I don't know who, but like someone else could have even done something else with the material. But I don't know. I for Kang Dynasty, I think Kang Dynasty will be great because I think Kang Dynasty will have what everybody's been clamoring for, and that is full on, connectivity, interconnectivity with the stories, and we're going to get answers, and we're going to get the Avengers, and it's going to be directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who did Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, who basically, in my opinion, directed one of the best MCU films.
Yeah, that was one of the standouts of Phase 4.
Yes.
Whatever you thought about it, I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home, everybody talks about. But that being said, Shang-Chi, that was one of the standouts of Phase 4. So, absolutely,
And I will say, emotional wise, like I didn't get emotionally attached in the scene with Scott saying goodbye to Cassie as he jumps into that bottom core, and he calls her Peanut, which is directly from the first film. I felt it, and that's something that I think a lot of people aren't feeling with these films. A lot of people I've seen, a lot of critics, they don't find a number of these films that emotional, or they don't really care that much. But for me, I do, and I care about these characters. And when Scott goes down and he has to say goodbye to his daughter, knowing how much he does care about his daughter, I care about it. And that was a great scene for me. I will say one of my disappointments with the film, though, is I personally didn't think we got enough answers for not just the other MCU shows, but also like the future of the MCU and where it was going. Because especially when you're looking at least the reviews I saw a lot of reviews saying you get the answers that you're looking for. And I mean, yeah, we heard about Kangs and the timeline branches, but I still want to know, how does Shang-Chi's rings factor into this? How does, the Fantastic Four or Blade, for Pete's sake, how do they all factor? And there's a lot of questions I still have. But David, I don't know if you want to close it out now, but my dinner is here.
Okay, so tell you what, why don't you go, and then I will continue on.
Okay.
And because I have my thoughts about this movie, and I'll take questions and comments from our great viewers, and we'll go. So, thank you for the time,
Yep.
and yeah, stay tuned for him come back next week for either a couple shows or you know another spoiler cast. All right, take care, Kyle.
Okay, David. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
So, guys, yeah, that this is what. So, look, it's gonna be. I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, the movie was okay. It wasn't great, like I said. Jonathan Majors crushed it. I can't wait to see Creed 3 now. That all being said, I think that I think that what you're gonna see is he did the best he could with the material he had. Okay, it's that simple. Um, the story had a lot of holes in it, a lot of holes in it, but it worked. Okay, it wasn't top tier MCU. Um, that being said, I would have liked to have seen a different ending. I think that they could have very easily put together a new, different ending that would have been beneficial. Um, and so, yeah, our viewer, our one of our great viewers here is asking, where is Luis? Michael Pena was nowhere to be seen in this movie, and that was a serious problem. There was no comic relief. Um, the jokes that were made, kind of, sort of, one of them landed. Bill Murray, who was trying to be funny, didn't work. Um, and I think obviously they kept him out of the mix because of the controversy. All that being said, this had no comic relief. This had no stakes. I think the fact that you put Kang in this movie with Ant-Man really was detrimental. So talk about so RL says talk about the ending. What would you have liked to have seen? Okay, so let me say this. The ending, the couple of things. Number one, what Kyle had brought up earlier. Um, what would I have liked to have seen? I would have liked to have seen Scott and Hope stay in the quantum zone, or the quantum zone, the quantum realm. Um, I thought when he pushed her through, I thought that that was it. I thought that he had basically sacrificed himself as a superhero should to do that. Um, the whole, and as I said to Kyle earlier, the whole reason why they needed to um, do what they did with him walking down the street and everything else is because they needed to wrap it up. They needed to make it full circuit. And the thing is that I didn't like it. And that, he's saying, well, did we really defeat Kang? This, and this. And I suppose they were trying to play to the after credit scene, which, you have multiple Kangs, and Destiny had brought up earlier in her comment that she believed that they killed Kang, which, by the way, I don't believe that for a second. If Kang is supposed to be this superhuman, this strong, and everything else, and he's got this huge empire, you're having Ant-Man beat him? That to me doesn't make any sense. But what she said was, um, there were many different versions of him, so they tried to be a menace. If that's the case, that diminishes what he really is. Really? And RL goes on to say, I didn't like the post-credit scenes. No. I mean, so what did he get sucked into? So, okay, so at the beginning of the film, so he got sucked into the device that was blown apart, that had so much energy to it, um, that it killed him. That was the device that um, it was a neuro. So when Michelle Pfeiffer is actually trying to insert that into the ship, so you could actually read minds. And so what she got, obviously, was this supercharge of where he was, what he was doing, and how he was doing it. And that was the first time we see him be Kang the Conqueror. And so, once again, Meters just killed it. So he was destroyed by that. To answer your question, he gets sucked into that core that had all that energy that killed him. I don't believe for a minute Ant-Man beat him. It to me just doesn't make any sense. If he has all of this energy and all of this power, I mean, even the scene in the when they're in jail, when they're locked up, and they basically they did that. It was one of those things where, you know, this is the scene where this is the still of the, when Scott gets out, and basically he says, I mean, he threatens Cassie and says, "Look, I'll do whatever you want me to do." It, I just didn't believe that he could beat him, right? So to have him get sucked into that core, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you have him stay in the quantum, if there are so many of these Kangs, then my thing is this: he should have been left in the quantum realm. He should have been left in the quantum realm, and that's it. He tried to get out before, and it was just too easy. To Kyle's point earlier about the ending of the film. When you have all these fake birthdays, and he goes in to get the cake, and he sits down, and that was the running gag, right? Oh, he hadn't made a cake since 2005, blah blah blah, and he owns a cake shop, and then he sits down, and it's supposed to be a kind and touching moment, and then he takes a bite and is like, ugh, and that's the end of the film. I was a lot to be desired. Now, that being said, let's talk about, now that we have our thoughts on the table, where does Marvel go from here? And I think this is a big thing. So they have a bunch of different projects coming out in the next, I don't know, coming months, to say the least. So where do they go from here? I think that, well, in a couple months you're going to get Guardians 3, which is going to be amazing. I don't think anybody's disputing Guardians 3 is going to take off. That being said, I think Guardians 3 is going to be great because it is done by James Gunn. It is going to be great because it is written by James Gunn. I have a lot of excitement, and I'm really curious to see where DC goes, but that's for another time. So we have Guardians coming out in May. And by the way, we're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering a bunch of stuff for the show. That is definitely going to be one of the spoiler casts we're going to be doing. So stay tuned for that. That being said, then they just moved the Marvels in November to November. It was a July 28th release off the top of my head. So they moved it to November, which I'm really thankful for, because the fact is that if what ends up happening is if the Marvels is in July, as it could have very well been, that could have been very problematic. I don't know. I mean, I think that so this is the new poster that came out today. It was, so we're finally getting some artwork for the Marvels and everything else. I like it. Higher, further, faster, together. I like the motto. I think it's really good. I'm really curious to see where this goes and how this is. Miss Marvel was a huge success for Disney Plus. And I think her being brought back into it, it's going to be a big thing. Um, I really am happy that they're taking the time to um, put this together, you know. And I think that um, it's one of those things where I think that if if this is a success, and I think it's going to be, then and by the way, guys, that's the thing. Since we've had 3 Marvel movies to come out per year for a long period of time, people just forget about these things. They just go, okay, they'll just move on because they know there's another one right around the corner, and um, the success, they're gonna make its money. It's gonna make its money, and people are gonna come out to see these things regardless. Um, I don't know. I just I think that I, I don't know. I think it was an okay movie. I mean, I think it was an okay movie, and I think that it's finally this has the potential. So Miss Marvel, okay, ended up making $1.1 billion, and so this has the potential to do that too, especially with the success of the Marvels. Um, so Guardians is going to do its thing. We'll see what happens with the Marvels. But getting back to Ant Man, because that's what we're all here for. I thought it was good. I thought it was good. It wasn't great. It was average. Run of the mill MCU. I thought Jonathan Majors crushed it. Um, I thought he was fantastic. I thought that he's going to, and he's going to have such a huge year. He really, really. I can't wait. I mean, he's having all this success with Magazine Dreams. He's in this. He's going to be in Creed next month. And he's going to get so many projects. He's going to have his pick of the litter in between. So, yeah, I I don't know. I mean, the question is Marvel going to actually listen and you know and listen to the fans and say, look, we want better content? Because here's the thing: while you're going to get people to come out, if your average moviegoer says, you know what, we're gonna relax and wait till this comes on Disney Plus, they might change their philosophies up. Um, but then again, they're making almost 700, $800 million per film. I mean, look at Multiverse of Madness. I mean, that was an average movie, okay, and it made $750 million. You know, um, so it it was an average movie. So I'm sorry, it made almost $1 billion. I stand corrected. It made almost $1 billion. It made $952 million, and that just goes to show you something, right? So I don't know. I think that the fact is, if they're putting out average movies and they're making almost $1 billion, they need to. Somebody said this today. I think I heard this. They need to take a step back and they need to reorganize and they need to come out with better content. I would rather have quality over quantity any day of the week and twice on Sunday, because what they're doing is not only and this is why they have Disney Plus. I mean, let's face it. I mean, that's why they have, but that being said, I would rather less content and have it be quality, top notch quality, than 10 projects that are average. I'd rather have five projects that are amazing. And I think that that's where they have to re-examine things. But at this point, it's a juggernaut for them, and they don't have any problem putting things out. So, I mean, we'll see where things go. I think it's going to be. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I think obviously, as I've said before, Guardians is going to make a huge amount of money. So, but I will say one thing, and that's this. Look at the drop next week. Look at the drop next week. So let's say this makes $100 million. You're running the mill. If you're good, you get between a $40 to $50 million. RL says that's not going to stop. They're not going to stop. There's no competition as far as other films. That's why in a few years DC is going to take over. Yeah, you're absolutely right, RL. You're absolutely right. Because the fact is that there is no competition. I would say this, that DC, I mean, it looks great on paper. And if Superman is going to do what we think it's going to do, it's all going to, we know that James Gunn's going to write it, probably direct it. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I heard that he's going to direct it or if he came out and said that, but it's all going to depend on who they get to be the actor. So, I mean, and not to mention you have a ton of other things. You got the Batman, which is coming out in 2025. I think you've got Joker. You've got all these movies, and Lady Gaga actually tweeted out. And so you say they need more R-rated films, and they have them. They're gonna. So it will be interesting though, because they've said Deadpool 3 is going to be rated R. Now, I don't know, so I don't know what else you can make rated R. And because here's the problem. I love the fact that they made Deadpool rated R. What else could you make rated R? That's the question. Because here's the thing. If Blade, I could see Blade being R, but you have to, let's put it this way. You have to make the story good enough to make it rated R. So don't just make it rated R just to make it rated R. You understand? Don't put all the blood and gore in there if that's not their vision. If it's good enough. That's why Logan was so good. Because it was emotional and it was powerful and you had stakes. But don't make Blade rated R just because you want to see blood and guts and everything else. Now, he's a vampire. I get it. And that's another whole. I mean, I can't wait for Blade because the fact is that it's one of the stories we haven't gotten in a long, long time. Now, I'll say this much. Here's something to keep in mind, RL. That once you make a film rated R, you totally isolated the whole demographic. Totally isolated. So that 15-year-old that could go see a Civil War, Infinity War, or Endgame or whatever, they can't go to see it now. They can, but they got to bring the parent, right? Now, that's not to say the theater is going to crack down on that because that's a whole situation for another time. But that's a whole other thing, too. So I don't know. I think it's going to depend on who. I mean, I can't wait for Mahershala Ali. I'm probably just butchered his name. I'm sorry. But I can't wait for him to be Blade. And this was, all the way back in 2022. I can't. It'll be interesting. But I would say, don't make it rated R just because you can. Make it rated R because you have to. It has to be a dark story. It has to be. I mean, you can make it as dark as the Batman and still get a PG-13 rating, right? So there are ways around it. So I would just say it's really going to depend on what their slate is. They've got Blade. We've got, Guardians coming out in May. We've got the Marvels in November. We've got New World Order. We've got the Thunderbolts. I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting. And the other thing I'll say is this, what I was asking Kyle earlier. The fact that we have a writer from Rick and Morty. I don't know. To me, there is a difference between writing for television, writing for animation, and writing for feature films. And RL says, and that's fine. Kids can have their hands on mobile devices and see what they can do on a device, uh, Iron Man could get a Logan-like film. Yeah, I mean that's a possibility. I mean, there has been speculation, and I'm not going to get into it today, but there has been speculation that Jonathan Majors wants Robert Downey Jr. to come back, and for me, that's a bad idea. That's just a bad idea because the thing is, if you bring Robert Downey Jr. back, what the hell is his 15-year arc for? Doesn't make any sense. So, but yeah, no, it's so. I want the Russo brothers to come back for all the Avengers they need to sign them to a contract. Yeah, and see, here's the problem. Here's the problem. I've always been fascinated with um, people or actors, I should say, that act outside of Marvel. And so, I mean, you take a look at what they've done. So take a look at what Robert Downey Jr. did. He didn't need the money. Okay, he goes and he does Doolittle, probably one of the worst films ever made. Right? You go take a look at Chadwick Boseman. He did 21 Bridges, which, by the way, the Russos produced. I actually liked it. I mean, I thought it was a little predictable, but I liked it. It was good. The Russos go do The Gray Man, probably, and I haven't seen it, so, but the acclaim out there is not. It's probably. I have a buddy who worked on it. He's a PA in the industry, and he's actually met Joe Russo, but they say it's one of the worst movies ever made. So that tells me that the story is incredibly important, and that's why you had stakes. Yeah, he says the gray man was trash. No, you're right. Um, so the thing is that's why you had stakes in an Infinity War. That's why it was so emotional because a lot of these people were gone. They left, and you were only left with the OG, and that's why the Endgame was such a big movie. So at the end of the day, it was a time travel movie, but no, I look. So many months ago, I had Ryan McQuaid on podcast, and he said that Marvel. It's not that he dislikes Marvel, but they've oversaturated the market, and he is absolutely right. Because at the end of the day, when you look at it, there's always a Marvel movie out there, always. Or if it's not out there, it will be soon to be released. Great movies, great movies do not get they get some, but they don't get all of the love that it gets because you're having an Ant-Man and the Wasp, you're having a Wakanda Forever, you're having a Guardians of the Galaxy 3, you're having all this stuff, and I thought the Russo brothers were proven with Infinity War, Civil War, Winter Soldier, and Endgame. Yeah, no, I've always said, and by the way, if you want to go back and watch it, so we have a series on the channel. It's called Perfect Movies. And actually, the February movie was Captain America: Winter Soldier. We're going to be doing Heath in March, but if you want to go back and watch Winter Soldier, Kyle and we actually give 5 good reasons why I think Winter Soldier saved the MCU. It was one of the reasons, but it's a perfect movie in my opinion. It's a perfect movie because you had stakes, because it was the first time you had a really big guest star in Robert Redford. The writing was tremendous. You had the reveal of the Winter Soldier. It had everything you wanted. And so it was a phenomenal movie. And ever since that point, once the Winter Soldier did it, and you have to understand too, remember that Thor the Dark World was the film that got released before that, and that really didn't get the great. Thor was really good. The Dark World, not so much. So when you have that next movie had better be damn good, and it was. And that's what really, in my opinion, saved the MCU. Go back and watch that. We've got a whole series coming up this year. So Heat's going to be in March. And by the way, we've got. We're going to be doing movies like The Departed, Spotlight, Pulp Fiction, and these are all going to be what I'm coining perfect movies. And we give facts about why it was a perfect movie. Facts: Winter Soldier saved the MCU, and then Civil War put it over the top. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that because the way that it was written, the way that you had to intertwine 12 characters, and whether you were Team Iron Man or Team Cap, it just, one of the things Marvel does so well is they're able to take source material, give it a little bit of a tweak, and put it on screen. And that airport scene is one of the best scenes in cinema today. And that movie's only been out 5, 6, 7 years. So, but yeah, so it's okay. Civil War is an amazing film, and I put that's top tier MCU for me. And by the way, guys, if you want to go back and I think there's a Marvel ranking. If there isn't, we'll do one. Maybe after Guardians, like our top 5. Kyle and I will do it like a top 5, top 7 MCU ranking. But yeah, okay. So I would. So I think that's going to be about it. Yeah, guys, thank you so even if you showed up for a few minutes, um, thank you very much. I hope you come back and stay longer. RL, thank you for all the fabulous comments. Please go check out all the other videos we have. And I said I wasn't gonna do one, but I'm gonna do an update tomorrow or a roundup tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Please, guys, and it really, really, really helps the channel. Hit that like and subscribe button because that's the way this gets out to everybody, and I want it to get out to everybody. And so I'm going to be doing a roundup tomorrow. And he says, as we're closing out, what happened to movie studios competing and dropping big hits in the same day? I feel like MCU marketing is dropping the ball when it comes to the television spots. Too many ruins the film. Because here's the thing. Now that Disney, Disney, now they have this. One of the big problems is there are too many spots. And there are too many trailers. One of the trailers that just dropped during the Super Bowl, or was the Friday prior to the Super Bowl, even though they came out with a spot on Sunday, was Fast X. Fast X, it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon movie. Whatever you think about the franchise, my thing is it was 4 minutes. Now, that's way too long. If a movie is, let's say, 115 minutes, okay, which is almost 2 hours, and that's TRT, total running time, you've basically given me 4 minutes of the movie. Why do I need to go see the movie now? But to your point about the spots and everything else, they're dropping so much with the movie that you're getting spoilers in the trailers. And I agree with you. Too many spots do ruin the films. And that was a big thing that Kevin Feige, when Multiverse of Madness came out, Kevin Feige was really upset about the fact that they gave way too much stuff in those trailers and way too much stuff in those TV spots. Now, there is a flip side to that coin. People will say, oh, well, you didn't give us enough. You have to give just enough. Okay, a first trailer is supposed to get you interested. A second trailer is supposed to get you a little more excited. And that third trailer is supposed to get your butt in the seat. That being said, you have to be able to give everybody just enough. You can make a 90-second trailer and make it fabulous. Give a little bit to them, but not. It's like bread fishing. It's like breadcrumbs. You put bait out there. You're hoping to catch a fish. When you catch a fish, okay, once you know what the bait is, then you can go back and repeat the process. And there is a formula for trailers, but I think that once you do that, people are going to start to catch on too. So I would just say this to your question and to your comment: there are too many spots, there are too many trailers, and you know, I hate to say it. I know. I mean, I love watching trailers and spots. Don't watch as many. Keep yourself in the dark. And I know it's tough. He says, "Remember when you had to be in the theater to see a good trailer? Now they just put them online and killing their anticipation." Yeah, and the reason for that is social media. So, and this is what I put out a tweet yesterday. And by the way, guys, um, if you want to go follow me, that's on Twitter. That's where I am. It's wannabe rounder. Um, to your point, RL, the thing is that you have social media. And this is why every single Super Bowl spot was online in 5 minutes after. Because they can reach millions and millions and millions of people for free. And I put out a tweet the other day and it wasn't there. And so that I really thought they could have, and now that we know they moved it, I thought they could have put the Marvels trailer at the end of the after credits. It's hard to keep yourself in the dark when the spot's on YouTube. Yeah. I mean, and when you have that much power and everything else, uh, you know, it is. It's tough. But I really thought they could have put the Marvels trailer at the end of Quantumania. I really, really do, because the fact is that people would, if they had done that, there had been precedent for it before. And the fact is that, um, it would have been one of those things where you would have had to have gone to see the movie to see it. Now you say, well, somebody would have leaked it. Yeah, and that's a major problem with anything. I mean, whether it's leaked trailers of Guardians or Fast X or whatever the movie is, and that is a serious problem that they have. Yes, they should have dropped the Marvels for the Super Bowl. I was curious why Marvel only dropped one trailer, because they didn't want to compete. The simple answer to your question, RL, is they didn't want to compete. You had so much content. You had so much content. We did. By the way, if you want to go back and watch our Super Bowl trailer show, that's actually on the channel as well. I thought, really truly thought, if everybody had done what they were going to do, I thought there could have been 9 trailers. Okay, you had Creed, which dropped a spot. You had Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny. I still don't like the name, but okay. But you got a spot for that. I'm shocked and floored you didn't see a Mission Impossible spot drop. Floored. But Creed 3 did drop the trailer 48 hours later, a couple days later. So that you got a whole brand new trailer of Creed 3 2 or 3 days later. Not to mention you had, Transformers, which would have had a 30-second spot. So you had so much stuff. There were a couple that didn't. Barbie, Oppenheimer, you know, there was so much out there that even Fast X put a 60-second spot there. So to your point, there was so much stuff that I don't think they wanted to compete, because the problem is you don't know how the game. I mean, this was one of the most exciting games in history, from what I understand. I didn't even watch it, but I saw the highlights and everything else, and it came down to really a couple of plays. But the problem is you're gambling on if people are going to watch the second half. People watch the first quarter, people will watch the second quarter, and people watch halftime. If the game isn't close, they'll just tune out. So if you're a company, if you're a movie studio, that spent $6 million on a Barbie, let's say, and you don't get the viewership that you think, people are going to be like, nah, I'm just going to turn it off. Instead, why would I do that when I can just drop it online on a Wednesday afternoon at 1:45 in the afternoon and blow the internet up? Because, number one, you don't have any competition. Number two, you're not spending any money because you can save that $6 million. And number three, it's a whole lot easier. The word of mouth is going to spread like wildfire. Guarantee you, everybody's going to be talking about it within that day or the next 24 hours. So to your point, why they only dropped one trailer is because they didn't want all the competition. And the one they dropped, it was the end of a franchise, right? James, this is the end of a franchise. Is Guardians 3. This is what it's all been, we're going to face the music. And we don't know who lives and who dies. I mean, we know, Dave Bautista, and I mean, the franchise is done, but who lives and who dies? So they want as much mystery as possible. So that's why they only dropped one trailer. So, yeah, I mean, and look, at the end of the day, they're marketing tools, right? I mean, look, here's the thing. Whenever Mission Impossible drops their next trailer, and they will, it's going to blow the internet up. And if they do it on a weekday in the afternoon, they're going to have it all to themselves. And they don't want to have to spend $6 million because you don't know whether the game is going to be good or not. So, anyways, but yeah, so RL, I want to thank you very much for your comments, and do come back because we're going to be having a lot more content here on the channel. So that's going to be the best film of the year. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Because here's the thing. Not only are you going to have the success of Top Gun, not only are you going to have the success of being the last in the franchise, because it is a part one. I mean, you can call Infinity War part one, but it's going to have everything. And I really, the one thing it is going to probably be one of the, if not the biggest film of the year, easily, hands down. Forget about money for a minute. I'm just talking hands down. And then when you couple in all these other things, and here's the other interesting thing too, it doesn't have that much competition. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have the whole thing slate in June in there, but oh yeah, Tom Cruise is really acting. I mean, going above. The one thing about Tom Cruise, RO, is this: he doesn't care about awards, he doesn't care about accolades, he doesn't care about money, he doesn't care about fame. He wants to bring you the very, very best movie he can. And that's why he and Jerry and Joseph Kosinski and Jerry Bruckheimer, okay, they waited. They waited to put Top Gun out because they knew. You can only imagine what's going to be in the next film. They knew. Yeah, I agree with you. And they knew that with this being practical, they had $1 billion movie on their hand. And it was the biggest movie, or one of the top two biggest movies of 2023. So and the one last thing I'll say is this: people don't appreciate for Tom Cruise for who he is and what he's done. They just don't. He's been doing Mission Impossible movies for the last 30 years, 25 years. They don't appreciate it. I mean, this man has hung from planes. He has, climbed the highest building in the world. He has, done some of the stunts that he has done. And this is the reason why he makes millions and millions. And he is, to me, one of the last movie stars we have out there. He is a movie star. And that's it. There's a difference between a celebrity, okay, somebody who's in the public eye, and then there is a difference between a movie star. And he is the last movie star we have. And when Mission Impossible is done, I think that's when we're going to see what kind of legacy he has. because that's what he's been doing for 25 years. I've always said, personally speaking, I've always said Tom Cruise is a much, much better actor, dramatic actor, than he is anything else. You take a look at all of his Academy Award nominations, whether they were for Rain Man, Magnolia, Born on the 4th of July, okay? Or Jerry Maguire. He crushes it. Not to say he can't do sci-fi like a War of the Worlds or an Edge of Tomorrow or a Minority Report. I'm not saying that. Action is his forte. I mean, he's been doing action. I mean, Top Gun, whatever else. People don't remember. There's another little movie that came out in 1986, called The Color of Money. Super underrated, but it was amazing, by Martin Scorsese with Paul Newman. I want the last film to be rated R. Yeah, no, that'll never happen, or else. It'll never happen. Because that will kill just... So, it will kill it, because the thing is, the story doesn't deserve it, right? It's all about, yes, when Mission Impossible is done, I think action films are done, unless someone's willing to take the risk he's taken, and nobody will. And that's what it comes down to. Nobody will. I mean, you have your stars like Vin Diesel and everything, but here's the thing: there's CGI. Why do you think it costs $350 million to make? So Geek Ledger says, I don't think they drop a teaser for the Marvels because they knew it would be delayed, and they probably wouldn't. And there would be rewrites during that delay. Yeah, I think that. Look, I think the fact that you're doing rewrites, I think that I'm glad that. Look, at the end of the day, I'm glad it got moved. I'm glad it got moved, because the fact is that if it had come out in July, don't forget, you had Mission Impossible, you had Oppenheimer, and you had Barbie coming out too. I don't think it would have gotten the... I don't think it would have made it... They would have had to print money for it, but I don't think it would have made as much. This is going to be $1 billion film. This is going to be $1 billion film. Mission Impossible. So, and I think that the fact is that when you have that kind of film that goes with it, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think that I would just say this. I think it coming out in November, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, because you're gonna have you have a ton of other quality movies that are coming out, and it's so I mean, I think that it's just gonna... It would have been tough to have made as much money as it could have. Geek says, also, I think dropping 3 Marvel films in a 6-month period is too much. They should delay Guardians a month or 2 to give Quantumania some legs. Here's the problem with that, Geek. The problem with that is, number one, the theatrical window is only 45 days. Okay? So you're looking at probably Ant-Man being on, if I had to guess, and I have no inside knowledge of this, if I had to guess, okay, you're probably looking at that being... Okay, here's what it comes down to. Once upon a time, back in the 2000s, so there was a little movie called Spider-Man. And that movie was supposed to come out. And what ended up happening, of course, it was a tragedy of 9/11. Sony pushed it back, and then they released it in May. Many years later, okay, it went from the blockbuster season being May, June, July, instead of June, July, and August. Now, to your point, Marvel has released all their major films, especially Guardians. But even when you see a Guardians has been a staple since 2014. So you're saying Quantumania is going to make its money. What other what other film can't compete until it was Creed 3? No, you're right. It has a whole month. It has a whole month. It has a whole month to make its money. And here's the thing. Even if it doesn't get the reception of a even if it's average, okay? I think that the fact is that you're going to have a full month to make your money. But the other thing too is, even if the reception's not as good as here, you're still going to have it overseas. This is going to make a whole bunch of money overseas. So I'm just going to throw out a couple numbers. This is all hypothetical. Let's say it makes 250. So I have it right here. So the first Ant-Man made 180 million back in 2015, made 180 million dollars domestic. Ended up making 518 total. So then you take a look at Ant-Man and the Wasp. Okay, that made 216 million here domestic and made 623 overseas. So what that's telling me is this: 2/3 of the money that it makes is overseas. So let's say it makes let's say it has a big weekend. Let's say it makes 250 to 300 million dollars, which is huge. The thing is that it's going to make its money overseas. That's it. It's going to make 600 to 700 million dollars. Don't for a minute think it's not. It's so it has a few weeks. So I should say this, and I know I was saying it earlier. So this obviously just dropped today, just opened nationwide. Okay. You've got Creed. And by the way, we're going to be doing spoiler. Kyle and I are going to be doing spoiler cast for all of these. Creed 3. We are going to be doing Creed Week, the first week of March. I'm going to go see it probably March 1st or 2nd. And he's going to go see it. We're going to do a whole rewatch of Creed for that week. I still have to see Creed 2, so I'm really interested in that. And then you've got Guardians coming out the 5th. Now, getting back to your point about why they should push back Guardians, because Guardians and Marvel have been a staple for the last 10 to 12 years. So, I see 7. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. 750 to 900 million worldwide. I absolutely see that. So, then we're going to have Across the Spider-Verse, June 2nd. We're going to be doing spoiler cast for all of these. Rise of the Beast, Transformers, Rise of the Beast, which I really don't have any interest to see. I'm gonna go obviously see it with Kyle, for this, but Transformers is one of those franchises like Fast X. I'm done. The Flash. This is probably going to be the most anticipated film of not only the month but the summer. And then you have Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny. Still don't like the name, but okay, that's gonna do big numbers. This is going to be the big one. Okay. And this has a shot, I think, to do. I mean, I said it could make it very well could make $200 million opening weekend for a bunch of different reasons that I've stated earlier. Then you have Oppenheimer. So, I mean, I think that all of those. So, we're going to be doing all of the those films. We're going to be doing spoiler cast for all those. So, I can't wait. This is just the start of it. By the way, and I know Kyle didn't make mention of this, stay tuned for Sunday for The Last of Us. We're going to be doing a spoiler cast for that, episode 6. And so if you want to go back and watch all the other streams, we've been doing live streams. Also, Kyle, I would say about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Kyle interviewed the editor of The Last of Us, Timothy Good. So yeah, that's going to be a blast. That was a great interview he did. This is the interview of Jonathan Majors, Quantumania. Yeah, no, absolutely. Jonathan Majors is going to crush it this year. Absolutely crush it. Crush it. And I can't wait to see. He is going to be able to pick any project he wants. And that's so cool to see. Somebody compared him, and I could very easily see this. Somebody compared him to possibly the next Denzel Washington. And I could very easily see it. I would love to see him do a comedy. I mean, not now, obviously, but maybe a couple years from now, I'd love to see him do a comedy to see what kind of acting chops he could actually, because I mean that shows you range. So, but yeah, we're gonna. So he did the interview with Timothy Good, the editor of The Last of Us. Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff coming for the channel, guys. If you already haven't, I hope you have. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be, the roundup. I'm going to be doing a roundup this week of some of the major stories that's happened. And yeah, guys, that's it. Thank you, everybody that stopped by, even for a few seconds. Thank you guys very much for your comments. Thank you guys very much for stopping by, and thank you much. Keep coming back. Please keep coming back because I love talking to you guys. I love hearing the comments. I love hearing the input. And yeah, so, but okay, so that's gonna about do it for this. Once again, thank you very much. Kyle is gonna, he'll be back next week. So, all right, guys, take care. Do the 3 things we need to do: be safe, be good to each other, and have a great day. All right, guys, take care. And I'm David Steele, and you have been watching Real Talks. Bye bye, guys.